July 21st, 2011, This Non-Religious Life. I'm your host, Ken. Today, we're going to not get through everything we wanted to get through, but it's going to be a fun episode. We're going to recover the Shroud of Turin, some comments we've had about it, and issue an official invitation, a challenge as such, to Dan Porter, who runs the Shroud of Turin blog, to come on our show. Stay tuned.
Rotten hooker. The very lies the serpent told to Eve in the Garden of Eden. Garden of Eden. Garden of Eden. The gospel of Jesus Christ. Spreads confusion and promotes lies. The gospel of Jesus Christ. Spreads confusion and promotes lies. The gospel of Jesus Christ. Spreads confusion and promotes lies. The gospel of Jesus Christ. Spreads confusion and promotes.
Hey, everybody. July 21st, This Non-Religious Life. I'm your host, Ken. With me, we have Jason.
Hello.
And Bob.
Hi, how's it going?
And our first order of business is we're going to be covering some comments and some feedback, so to speak, on one of our previous videos. I believe this was, episode 2?
Was it? Was that long ago, huh?
It was forever ago. Seems like forever ago. But if you go back and look through some of our old episodes, you'll see that we covered the Shroud of Turin. It was a fun episode. I had a lot of fun with it. I know Bob did. He got very excited.
Bob never gets excited.
Yeah, no, never, never.
And so some of the stuff we did was we went through and we looked at the arguments for the Shroud. And almost immediately we had this person, Dan Porter, who runs the Shroud of Turin blog. It's shroudofturin.wordpress.com.
He must have like some kind of like Google Net or Google Alert set up for anything that was Shroud of Turin, because that comment was like
it really was. It was almost like immediate. Let's see. It was he made his first one May 14th. Oh my God! It was. What day did we do that episode?
It was probably the fastest comment we've had.
May 12th, 2 days after. Yeah, it was May 12th that we put up that episode. And so 2 days later, he writes his blog. He actually wrote 2 blogs because
he didn't have anything kind to say either.
No. Apparently, he commented on our YouTube page, and his comments were marked as spam. Probably because he was trying to insert his, self-promote his blog.
Yeah.
And when you do that on YouTube, sometimes the service itself marks your comments as spam. So he flipped out.
We didn't mark it as spam.
And wrote a second blog the next day.
Or maybe his is spam. Maybe Google looks at his account as spam because he goes after everybody who mentions the Shroud.
I mean, it's possible. And he got all his little followers to come after us. But one of the things he does is his blog is it's very like talking down to us, like we're children.
I got that too.
And he ends it with
I need that sometimes.
Another suggestion: do some research, real research. He doesn't address half the things we mention on the video. He talks about the travertine aragonite. He talks about high resolution microprobe. Blah 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 blah. It's
we were called ignorant and ill-informed.
It's terrible.
That's the nicest thing I heard all day.
But you know what? Even if I am ignorant of something, and even if I am ill-informed, I promise you the one thing I will not be is disingenuous. And I think his behavior is disingenuous.
That's the thing. I figured, Jason and I both figured it was just, someone getting upset because we were attacking his favorite, theological artifact.
I think the word attack is a bit stretch of what we were doing. We were just talking about what people were saying and why it's.
It was a perceived attack, though, for him. And so I emailed him, like, not long after. I sent him an email saying, hey, we find the evidence to be lacking, but if you have evidence, we'd be more than happy to hear it. Like I love evidence. Evidence is great. If you can show me something is real and you have evidence to support your claim, bring it on. Like, I will change my fucking thoughts like that. Like,
it's got to be good evidence.
Yeah,
too.
well, that's the thing. Substantive evidence. Like, if you can show me an argument is correct with evidence, then I'll change my mind.
All right. So, with regard to the Shroud, and you know what? And I've taken what he had to say to heart, and I've looked at some of the things that he, is holding up as their evidence, and this is like, I'm not saying he's won me over on any arguments, but I've seriously considered what he had to say. And I know in that blog entry he says, like, oh, well, you should read or you should watch this documentary. And it's a link to a documentary. I watched it. Not impressed. And here's the thing with that documentary. One, it was produced by the History Channel, which I know that sounds good on the surface, the History Channel, but the History Channel is also that fine network that brings us shows like Ancient Aliens and Monster Hunters and UFO Roundup, right? So not exactly a credible source. Like, believe me, it's entertaining, but I don't get all of my facts and information regarding a subject from what the History Channel produces. And that whole episode had a very pro-Shroud slant to it, where the person, it was the woman that had a plausible explanation for how the Shroud was, how the image on the Shroud may have been formed, but it was a purely human element. And they were like, oh, but look at her evidence, her method is completely, couldn't happen. And then they have the guy that has some kind of like divine radiation theory, and his is presented as the best idea of how the image was made. Yeah. So it was a little slanted.
Yeah, it's another thing is he tries to call us out as being ignorant, and he says that because I mentioned the blood being paint, and he's like, but the blood is organic. It's not inorganic like paint. But I do believe I said that it was tempura paint, which is made from egg albumin, which is organic. Like, showing that it's organic.
Yeah.
I mean, he's just sort of like dismissing things out of hand. Well, and then what you called, when we talked about it earlier, anomaly hunting.
Yeah.
They have the presupposition that it's real, and then they search for pieces that they can use to support their claim and ignore things that don't.
Well, right, and that's the, I guess that's sort of the crux of the argument is you can't start from a conclusion and then find things that are anomalous and point to that and say, all right, that's it, that must be it, because the only other explanation is that it's divine, it's a divine creation. And his blog, he has this veneer of, he's like, oh, well, I'm skeptical, but look at all this evidence that shows that this thing is real. And what I would like to talk about is the credibility of that evidence, because it's poor at best. And I know, just like his History Channel documentary, I don't really consider that as good evidence or even good information. That was a load of crap, that thing, man. But there are legitimate guys out there who are doing work. And one of the guys that always gets brought up is papers published by Raymond Rogers, and he's the guy that's doing a lot of the, I don't know, it's like the high-end Raman spectroscopy work on the Shroud. Or he did. He died, I think. He's dead now, but he did do that work, and and in the Shroud of Turin blog, he's always referencing his papers, and he's like, see, it was published in this scientifically peer-reviewed journal, right? And the journal is the Thermochemica Acta, and Raymond Rogers was on the review board for 20 years for that journal. Like, that's the fox watching the hen house.
Yeah.
You can't. Well, one, it's a low-impact journal, and so, which means it's not marginalized by the mainstream science community, but a little bit. But if something's really going to be peer-reviewed, the meat grinder of science is the guys you want on your editorial review board are guys that don't want to publish your paper. They have to publish it because your science is so good and your evidence is so good. Not you were the member of the editorial review board for 20 years, so we're going to publish anything you send us.
Yeah.
I mean,
it's one of the biggest faux pas in science.
The guy's a believer, and he was the editor of the journal in which his papers were published.
Yeah.
So right, man, that's not credible work, I guess. I don't know. It calls into question the credibility of the work.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't say it dismisses the credibility outright, but it's suspect.
Agreed, yes.
You know, it's like, sure, this journal agrees with me because it's my journal. Like, you know, it's what the Discovery Institute does.
Right,
Where they put out
their own journal.
peer-reviewed journals, but they peer-review their journals. Like,
yeah,
of course they're going to publish anything that agrees with them because it's their journal and they're writing it.
yeah. You know, and from watching, like, just sort of taking a spectator stance on all this Shroud of Turin controversy, I like to see that that one of the things that gets talked about the most is well, there's two things actually, but one that gets talked about the most is always the carbon dating, and depending on who's trying to argue against the veracity of the carbon dating that puts it in the 13th century, 14th century, which is regarded as the definitive answer, all the believers tend to backpedal, and they're just trying to find ways to poke holes in the veracity of the carbon dating, and everybody, like, they say, like, oh, well, it must have, it's just, like, there's three things. They say, like, well, like, one, they made the argument, like, oh, it was the samples were taken from a repaired section of the shroud, and or they'll say, oh, well, there was this is the new one. The new one is there was a bioplastic film that we found that's on these relics that gets accumulated over time, and since it's organic and carbon based, it can throw off the dating. And or the other one was, they say, when the shroud was in that big fire, I forget what year.
In the 1400s, I think.
Yeah, when it was in that big fire, when it had all that damage done to it, they say, like, oh, well, being in that intense heat, because the heat was strong, it was hot enough to melt the silver bindings of the box, and it was that molten metal dripping on the shroud that caused a lot of the burn holes in it. And they say, like, oh, well, it was that intense heat that has thrown off the carbon 14 dating, and I don't know, it's just backpedaling and excuses, and it was funny. I was listening to Dr. Robert Price's Bible Geek High, it's the newest one, and somebody asked him a hypothetical question, and it was about the P52 scripture fragment, and apparently, you know, there's some controversy about that because one, it's a very small fragment of paper, and it has the portions of the Gospel of John written on it on the front and back.
Yeah.
And it's important for one of two ways. We believe that it's the earliest gospel we have. It's the earliest piece of scrap of paper with the Gospels written on it. And the question is, how old is it? Like, when was it written? And the only dating that they've been able to do on it was by analysis of the handwriting, right? And so they were comparing it to other writings at the time, and you know, it puts it late second century, they may or may not agree with that date. It could be older, it could be younger. If it's older, it means something. If it's younger, it means a lot of things.
It's traditionally dated between like 110 and 130.
Right.
Yeah.
But there's people who say that it's older.
Yeah.
And if it's older, it could mean some other things. Like then it would be the oldest evidence of a book. It would be the oldest, it would be like it would add some weight to a first person narrative about what happened to Jesus. And so the question that was posed to Dr. Price was, if you could carbon-14 date the P52 papyrus, but you would get the answer, but the relic is consumed in the process, is it worth doing? And it's an interesting question. And his point was pretty. He had a excellent point. He said that, well, one, he said we don't really we shouldn't. He wanted to preserve the relic itself because he didn't think it would be worth it to consume the relic to find out. He's like, maybe in the future we'll have a way to carbon date something or to date something without using it up. And then he said, but more importantly, don't do it because no matter what answer you get, it's not going to matter. If the date's much later, people won't accept it. No matter that's just the fact of the matter. Whatever the answer you get, whether it's right or wrong, if it doesn't agree with somebody's already ideologically and theological inspired presupposition, if it doesn't match that, they're not going to accept it. And it's much like the carbon-14 dating on the Shroud.
Of course, and
they don't.
The argument, like the obvious answer, for me, for someone who comes up with all these ways to explain away the carbon-14 dating of the Shroud, is, well, then use another piece of the Shroud, date it again, do the test again.
That's kind of the thing, though. To test it again, I guess the Vatican has control of the Shroud, and they're not.
Yeah. They're not allowing
making it available for testing
because the testing came out against them.
And
3 universities all agreed on the date with a 95% certainty. That's incredible.
Yeah, I know, right? Right, 3 tests, they all get the same answer. Right, so now it's this game of trying to poke holes in it. And it's exactly like Dr. Price said, because it doesn't agree with it's not what they want it to be, they just don't accept it.
Yeah.
So it doesn't matter what the answer was. It's unimportant.
But I think that's an important distinction, because it's similar to what made us want to talk about this in the first place. If the answer doesn't come out in their favor, they don't want to talk about it anymore.
Right.
And I sent an email to the guy that runs the site. And I said, come on the show. Talk to us. We'd love to have you on. I would love to hear what you have to say. He never emailed me back. Jason commented on his blog, left a comment on there, saying pretty much the same thing, just saying, hey, Ken emailed you and we haven't got a response. We'd love to have you on there. And, we'll throw up an image of the post right now. And, you can see that it's very friendly invitation to come on the show. Never had a response. It's been 2 months, not a response, and I don't foresee us getting one.
He probably regards us as a bunch of jerks. Which is
I think it's easier for him to milk his followers and cause that. Oh, you're right because these people are wrong, and not have. I mean, it'd be devastating for him to have a discussion. It wouldn't serve him. It wouldn't be in his best interest to have a discussion about it openly. He can do it on the internet through comments and posts because it can be one-sided and it can be straight up biased, and he can paint the picture to his readers any way he wants. But if he's verbally and digitally face-to-face, he can't paint the picture he wants because whatever picture he paints will be smeared when a question's asked about it.
Mm-hmm.
So,
I get the sense that, like he says in his comments, and he says in there that he says that he doesn't really have any stake in whether the shroud is real or not, or whether it's divine, or whether it's a hoax. But I get the sense that he's a believer. He believes, and for this thing to be real is important for his theological worldview. I mean, I think that's what it has to be.
Well, obviously he has invested interest in it, or he wouldn't be writing this blog. And whether that's to get the views to his site or to drive home the belief that this is real.
Yeah, and I'll be honest with I'll be the first to say if the evidence shows that this is real, it will change my worldview. Only I don't think the evidence is compelling at all. I think that it's just a lot of anomaly hunting and cherry picking.
I think it's. I mean, I want to say it's a dichotomy too, because they're saying, if it's not a forgery, it's real, and if it's real, it's Jesus, and if it's Jesus, Jesus is God. And I that's such a it's such a fallacious road to go down.
Yeah, I see exactly what you mean.
You're jumping from one point to the other with no bridging.
Yeah.
I mean, even if it is authentic to the first century, say it is. Say it actually dates to the first century. That doesn't mean it's Jesus.
Right.
If it is Jesus, that still doesn't prove Jesus was the Messiah, let alone the Son of God. It's so... It's such... I don't even want to call it bad logic, because it's not logic at all.
Yeah. Well, right, but for their worldview, and you're right, it follows those jumps, right? It's not a forgery, so it has to be real. If it's real, then the person in it is Jesus. And if Jesus is real, then Jesus is God. And they start from the very top of that that heap. Jesus is real. Jesus is real, and he's God. So he must be in the shroud, and the shroud must be real. It can't be a forgery. They're working backwards.
Yeah, they work backwards, and then they lead you back up the trash pile.
Yeah. No, I see that exactly. That's exactly right.
Yeah, and it's sad because I think it's an interesting subject, but this sort of backwards working reminds me of the crazy talk that Harold Camping does with his numbers. It's a fallacious argument that he then works backwards to get an answer that he likes.
Yeah. Well, and I think with the shroud, I think one is very complex. The thing's obviously old, so it's been around a while. A lot of people have had their hands on it, and I think that part of what we're seeing is not just that skewed logic, but I also think part of it is pious fraud. I think somebody in there at one point, and I'm not going to say Max Fry, but that's who I think it was, or either he was duped by somebody else that was committing pious fraud, because that's another aspect of the shroud that gets held up a lot, is this pollen grain analysis, and that was Max Fry who did all that work, and either he committed the fraud or he was duped by somebody else. But so they're holding up the pollen analysis. It's it can only come from this area of Jerusalem and only be at this time. And oh look, there's these funny thistles around the head area, the crown of thorns. But again, much like the History Channel, Max Fry is not exactly a credible guy.
No.
I mean, he has a history of being wrong.
Yeah, not just being wrong, but
being shady and
intentionally dishonest and in his research.
Yeah.
And
yeah. So right. So, but even the most well-meaning person can be fooled by pious fraud.
Of course.
And so I can't say what is or isn't pious fraud, but I can say that Max Fry is not a credible, reliable source.
I mean, for the viewers who might not have, we discussed this back in the episode on it, but give us an example of Max Fry.
The biggest thing with Fry, he was the guy that authenticated the Hitler diaries, which were later proved to be fake, and he had a vested interest to prove them as authentic, and so So I'm not saying he hoaxed any of the pollen evidence on the shroud. I mean, it's possible he did, or he was fooled by somebody else. But with something that old and that involved, and people have a vested interest in it being proved authentic, then you have that element of pious fraud. It comes into play.
Yeah. It just makes me shake my head, you know?
So it's possible that this person for the Shroud of Turin blog is he may have been duped like everybody else into believing someone else's pious fraud.
Mm-hmm.
And he wouldn't be the first.
No, and he won't be the last. It's a fun topic, and I don't purport to be an expert on the Shroud, but I mean I read a lot of stuff for that episode. Like I went through, and I was looking at
from
arguments.
The fire hose once again.
Oh my God, I was looking at arguments for and arguments against, and one of the things he calls us out is that we used a video featuring brother, big air quotes on that. Brother Michael Diamond, who's a self-proclaimed Benedictine monk of a 2-person cult. The other person, the other person apparently is his brother, Peter. And I agree. Like I watched some of his other videos, and they're insane. But there's nothing anomalous about his arguments for the Shroud that I could find. He went through point by point all of the apologetic arguments for the authenticity of the Shroud. You know, he wasn't claiming aliens did it or some other like crazy nonsense. I would be hard pressed to find a believer disagree with any of his points.
Yeah.
You know, we picked the video because it was concise and the layout was easy to edit so that we could have a believer showing one argument and then we could go back and discuss it. So
yeah, and okay, so I'll even allow like maybe we did pick a poor video to discuss, but like one, we were just getting our feet wet.
Well, plus the stuff he brings
we did
up.
Make mistakes, and like I said, you can call me wrong and you can call me ignorant and misinformed, but you can't call me disingenuous. And I don't think we did anything disingenuous.
yeah.
I mean, the questions that you addressed are the ones that are common questions anyway. That's why that video, it doesn't matter if that guy in that video was credible or not. The questions are common questions about the issue.
That's exactly it. And
Right,
they're common apologetic arguments.
Yeah, and it's not like we picked it because, oh, look, here's a straw man that we can pick apart. There's just this guy seemed to represent the believer's viewpoint. He covered the most arguments where we wanted to go. It seemed to be a representative, a video representative of all the places we wanted to go in the discussion. So, yeah, it's not like we're like, hey, this guy's a dummy. Let's go get him.
It wasn't like he was making far left field, questions about like stuff that it's not common. It's not. They were average questions. I mean, you could go to any website and see the same questions. He just put the video together well enough that we could show it, and it's precise and to the point, and it didn't stray off into other philosophical beliefs. It was, this is the questions, this is my answer, and then
we could issue our rebuttal for each one.
You know what I thought was another example of disingenuousness is when we interviewed Brother Mike. And remember, and we were very polite about it when we interviewed Brother Mike, and he talked on and on about his Herald Camping, May 21st, end of the world thing, and we let him go. We let him go, and then we weren't even asking very pointed questions in the interview. And then after he talked for an hour, he left, and then we took it apart amongst ourselves, and his website reposted that video. But they cut it off at the hour mark.
Sans the second hour.
Sans the critical analysis. That's disingenuous.
Yeah, of course. It's, editing for editing's sake.
Right.
And I tried to get in a few punches here and there, but man, he came on at the last minute. It was,
Yeah.
you know.
Well, no, I mean, but even if oh, there's PC Myers.
This website's done by Dan Porter.
Yeah.
That's the guy that does that website.
Is he pointing out that PC Myers is a big atheist meanie?
I mean, I don't know if it's the same person, but it says here that, quote, I always believed in God and I've always been a Christian, which means I've always believed at some level of understanding. And then he goes into talking about no proof that the Shroud of Turin is real, survived scientific and historical scrutiny. But if this is the same person running two blogs, here's where he says that he's Christian. Anyway, go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah. It's...
Well, if he wants to come on the show, I promise you, he'll get his say, and however it turns out, it'll be unedited. It'll be as it is. We're not gonna edit away anything that he says that disagrees with how we.
I
think
mean,
or
when
feel.
we interviewed Brother Mike, it was all live.
Right.
I mean, there was
right.
like a 5-second delay or something like that between us recording and it going up. We didn't edit out anything with Brother Ali.
No.
We let
I don't
him
have the
his
time to edit out anything.
Yeah, right. I know.
I just put it
is what it is.
Yeah, what you get, what we put on this, good or bad, this is what you get. So.
Yeah. I mean, if he thinks he can come on and make us look like dummies,
Do it.
he's more than welcome to come on the show. Even now, even after
See,
he's
that's
still...
live. That's not going
Yeah.
to be edited out.
Yeah, right. The only thing we edit out is when I do my little intro at the beginning and I laugh halfway through it.
Right. That's our complex editing.
But
That's
that's
the
not
complex
editing because I
editing.
just stopped the camera and then we do
Sophisticated
another
production
five.
values.
A little hint: we do the intro after we do the show. But I mean, that's
But I think
about
everybody
that's,
does that.
That's the height of editing here.
Yeah.
You know.
All right, we'll do it, Ken. Throw the gauntlet down.
Yeah,
man.
I have, and this is a second from me.
We need you to make a proclamation, a
Well,
declaration.
here, I will make the declaration. I will read what I wrote to you guys when we got that
Yeah.
comment. Let me pull up my.
We're gonna put it out.
Pull up
there
the
for everyone
comment,
to hear. I want the
because
people downstairs to hear it too.
It's. Let's see.
1 second. So
I'll pull up my email too, and I'll read my email.
Dramatic build up.
Dun 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 dun. Dun. I'm gonna put music in there, so I may edit. No, I'm not putting music in there. Okay. You want to read the comment?
You read the comment. I'll read my email.
I don't know where it's at.
Is it coming up?
I have it, but there's multiple comments. Oh yeah, here it is. He's addressing another commenter, or she. I don't know what the gender is. I really hope so. I managed to watch about 14 minutes of the video before shutting it down. It was laughable how ignorant all members who commented in this video are to the actual facts to do with the Shroud. They should take Mr. Porter's advice and thoroughly research something before they go posting it on YouTube. It makes them look stupid, all caps, and definitely not worth trusting in the future.
I like that they used Uber caps lock.
Yep.
I love that.
That's good.
Yeah.
Here's some help in your research. Shroud.com, Shroud TV, and Short Story.
I think it's supposed to be Shroud Story.
Yeah, but no, that's
Shroud
no, it's
Story.
Brower, yeah. I'm not even going to point out the spelling mistakes. Whatever.
You just did.
Yeah.
So that's the comment. And we love comments. I don't care if they're good or bad. I love them.
Yeah.
They make me happy.
Yeah.
They make my day. Where is mine? Yeah, so my comment back, because Bob said that, we should revisit this, and I said maybe we shouldn't revisit this, but talk about the comment and how the guy who runs the Shroud site does not have the balls to talk to us and have a real conversation about the
now you're
Shroud.
calling him out.
Yeah. Ooh.
So, I'm the guy in the background of this show. I just set up the stuff so Bob and Ken can do this show, but I'm calling you out. I'm calling anybody out who is associated with this website. We give our phone number. We give our email address. We give our Facebook. Well, I'm going to retract the Facebook. The phone number is the key. Or email us and set up a time for when we record, we'll have you on the show. Because if you're going to leave comments and saying that we're stupid, challenge our stupidities, challenge our ignorance, challenge the things that we don't know, because, you know, we want to learn, unlike some people. So come on the show and show us what you got. And I'll sit back in the back and not edit.
And not edit.
So that's exactly it. You know, I sent this email, and I'm going to read this email right now. This was sent on the 18th of May. I said, "Dear Mr. Porter, thank you for watching the show and giving feedback in your blog. It is exactly what we, the hosts, are looking for with this show. And we always sign off with our contact email and phone number. I'm not sure why your comment on YouTube account was marked as spam, but it wasn't any of us who did it. Jason believes that it might have been how you typed out your blog URL that flagged YouTube to automatically mark your comment as spam. Regardless, it has been unmarked as such. Please believe me when I say that we are all about the evidence. And while Jason, Bob, and myself all find the evidence severely lacking, we are open to anything anyone on the opposite of the aisle might be able to offer in the way of more concrete evidence. This brings me to my real reason for contacting you. I've discussed with my co-hosts and would like to revisit the Shroud claims to cover anything we may have missed in our 1-hour show. If you would be willing, we would like to have you on the show as well. I don't know whereabouts you live, but we can Skype you in so you can participate in the conversation. We don't have a set date for the show, but if you would be willing to come talk with us about it, we would be more than happy to have you. Best regards."
Quite the wordsmith, Ken.
You know, it's...
I'm sorry. Quite the wordsmith, Ken. Mad props to the skinny guy.
Yeah, there it is.
You've been slipping up lately.
I know. I haven't said your name.
It's, and you know, it's a very, as you can see, a very polite email. You know, I apologize for any misunderstandings.
Well, the politeness is gone.
No, I think that it was a more than diplomatic approach.
So, but as I said, no response thus far. It's been 2 months.
Well, I'm sure, like I said, I'm sure he's got a little Google alert set up, so he'll be all over this, and I don't know, maybe it'll get him spun up enough that he'll respond to you.
Maybe. I hope so. I want him to respond. That's the thing. Like, I like hearing, you know, objections, because it spurs me to go on and like look up arguments against myself, and it helps me. I mean, I'm going to say when it comes to theology and religion, I don't know, 9 out of 10 times, it just helps me cement the position that I was in.
Yeah. Well, yeah, right. You know, I think I looked at some of the things that are held up as refutations or evidence for the legitimacy of the Shroud, and I remain unconvinced. I think it's poor evidence and poor logic, and you know, and if somebody wants to talk about it, great, awesome.
Yeah, totally. And that's not just the religious, you know. I mean, when I hear something that I don't necessarily agree with from skeptics, I go and I look it up, and sometimes I change my mind. Sometimes I don't. It's all about the evidence, and it's all about being honest in the delivery.
But you know, I think the funny thing with this, the whole Shroud argument too, is it has been examined in so many different ways under so many different scientific disciplines that it's hard to really. You might even be an expert in one thing, but somebody else is going to come along with some sort of evidence or argument that's way out of your field, you know. So it's hard. I get it. It's difficult, right? I mean, it's so multidisciplinary that no one person is going to be an expert in all areas pertaining to the evidence, right? So it's hard to do. So you have to do things like evaluate the credibility of the evidence, or, you know, consider all the other arguments. I agree. It's not easy. It's tough. It's complicated, and the waters are certainly very muddy. But at this point, I remain unconvinced.
Well, we also have to remember the other comment that we received on our video is they reference to us, but I think you're missing the point of religion. Faith with evidence, there is no faith. You have to believe to keep your faith, and to believe you have to look for something that's beyond proven things. And what if there was a tape or a recording showing a resurrection? Would you believe it? Would it change anything at all? Would it be people who believe it, or it would be people who believe it and there are others who won't? Like now, because faith is independent of facts.
It's an interesting point, and that was actually in regards to our first episode, which was the resurrection challenge. But I think it's
That resurrection challenge.
I think it's applicable to this as well.
Yeah, that's why I brought it up.
And I say it all the time. If you believe something on faith, cool. But don't pretend like you have facts. Faith is the acceptance of a position in spite of evidence, not because of it.
Have you listened to?
So you wait. I'm sorry. So what you're saying, just to put it in real world terms, let's say that I have faith that Jesus existed, or I just have faith in Christianity.
Yeah.
Whatever that means to whatever. And we're having a discussion, and I say, it doesn't matter what the evidence is because I have faith that this is the way it is.
Exactly. Faith is
that would be acceptable.
Immovable. It's acceptable for you to have that position, but it is.
But I'm saying, is that acceptable for you to accept?
Oh God, no. It's one thing to have faith, and you have as much liberty to believe whatever you want. And if you want to have faith in something, wonderful. I support your decision to believe that. I think it's misguided. I think it's dishonest. But the only thing more dishonest is trying to pretend like you have evidence for faith. Faith is independent of evidence.
Have you listened to the latest Bible Geek?
I haven't.
I'm
following
I think it's the most recent one. But Dr. Price, I'm really getting into him too. By the way, thanks for turning me on to that. He was addressing a question, and he brings up what he calls the sin of faith, and he makes a very good point. How much faith did Abraham need to have? How much faith did Moses need to have? He was in the presence of God, right? He was there. He heard God's voice, if these stories are true. How much faith do you have to have when you're there? You're witness to the miracles. You see it. It's the sin of faith. Those guys they believed it in the stories because they were in the presence of the divine being.
Yeah.
So they didn't have to have faith. They had evidence.
Yeah, no, exactly. They,
The apostles were in the presence of Jesus in
that's
the
the
stories.
difference. Exactly.
They didn't have faith.
Exactly. The apostles, they didn't need faith because they watched Jesus do what he did, supposedly. They received the Pentecost. The Holy Spirit came down on them and allowed them to speak so that every single person around them, no matter what language they spoke, could understand them. That isn't faith.
They were supposedly witness to these miracles.
Experience.
Yeah, right. So Dr. Price, he calls it the sin of faith.
I think that's an apt term.
Yeah, right. So even in the Old Testament, those guys didn't need to have faith.
Yeah, no. King David didn't need faith. Solomon didn't, because God was right there, hanging out with them, being like, you should do this. You shouldn't do this. You should believe in me.
So now,
of course, I'm going to believe in you if you're standing right next to me.
Right. So now in our
you don't
culture,
exist.
we're told that faith is a virtue.
Yeah.
And I'm with you, dude. I disagree. And you want to talk about disingenuous? Faith is probably the ultimate disingenuous position.
Mm-hmm.
I believe it because I believe it.
Yeah, God said it. I believe it. That settles it. And that's faith is it's
well,
a precarious
that's
position.
The other thing too. We can even make the argument and find evidence God didn't really say it.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
why are you believing it?
Yeah. It's I just I hate when people want to argue about faith and then bring up supposed evidence for their faith. You can't have evidence for faith, which is what I'm trying to get at, is like you can't. Like if you believe something on faith, you believe it because you believe it. Period. It doesn't matter how much evidence on either side there is. You believe it because you believe it, and it is virtually
Have you
an
read,
immovable position.
Sam Harris has a good book about that too. It's called The End of Faith.
Yeah.
And he argues that in our world now, you don't faith is a detriment, right? We don't have to have faith in anything anymore.
Yeah.
It's gone. Faith is not even it's not necessary.
Yeah, the scientific method essentially did away with the requirement of faith.
Yeah.
We can now test things. You know, we understand physics
Yeah,
at both,
it's
at both
a really
a
good book if
quantum
you haven't
and
read
a
it.
macro level. We understand, we have theories of disease and the atomic model and gravity and evolution.
Yeah. But here's the thing. And this is all right. We're going to talk about faith a little bit. But how many times have you had that discussion with the believer, and they say, "Well, science is just a faith in and of itself," and that is the worst. I
hate it.
That drives me
Science
up the wall.
is a self-correcting discipline.
Right, and that's the thing. When the evidence changes, the scientific viewpoint changes with it. Faith does not.
I actually had a little bit of a back and forth with a believer recently who said the argument was along the lines that I think we were talking about the fused chromosome in the human genome, chromosome 2, and he said that's just a theory, and I hate when people say that's just a theory. Like, the colloquial term theory is a guess. In science, there is nothing colloquial about the term theory. It is a very strict term that means an explanation for all of the facts and all of the evidence that is supported by everything and refuted by nothing.
Yeah.
When something comes up that refutes it, you rework the theory. But things like evolution, I hate.
right,
It's like pointing to an apple orchard and being like, "That's an orchard, not an apple." It's like, yeah, that's it, it's that theory isn't a fact. It's just full of facts.
Right, right.
You can go in and you can pull a bushel of facts out of it.
But even right, like they always say, like evolution is just a theory, and right, and then the atheist comes back and says, all right, well, so is gravity, right? But what that means though is there's a subtle point to that, and it is that the theory of, be it evolution or gravity, right? Let's stick with gravity. Is our theory is the best model we have to understand how it works, and even now that there's subtle tweaks that are being made to that model, to that theory. The theory is changing all the time. Mm-hmm. Not to radically make it different, but to include our deeper understanding of how it works. It's when you find out something new, it isn't, oh, we have to rewrite textbooks. No, we now have a deeper understanding of how and why it works. So the theory gets tweaked slightly.
Yeah, and I agree. But I think the biggest problem is people's understanding of a theory. A theory is the best, like, the highest level of understanding in science you can have. The only thing greater than that is a law, which is strictly mathematical.
Right.
Laws only work in the realm of mathematics and only in closed conditions. The law of gravitational force, or like Kepler's law of motion. Yeah, they're laws. They're arguably better than theories, but they're only in closed conditions, and it's strictly mathematical.
It's an idealized situation.
The laws of thermodynamics, totally mathematical.
Yep. No, I agree. Right when you incorporate all the subtle peripheral things that influence them, then the law becomes a theory, and our theory is the best explanation.
Yeah.
And I get all like red in the face when somebody says like, "Oh, well, it's just a theory. Science is just a faith in and of itself." Oh, no, it's not. No, it's not, because science is going to change. Your faith won't.
Yes, exactly, and that's what I say. Like, science is the examination of evidence to come to a conclusion. Faith is a conclusion in spite of any evidence.
But people with faith say they examine the evidence that the Bible exists, so there's faith that God exists.
Well, then they have
that
a poor
the resurrection existed,
evidence.
the shroud existed, all the things that make up the church teachings existed. So therefore,
I think that comes from either a poor examination or none at all. If you want to examine the things and then ignore them, go for it. Go for it. You are more than, that is your prerogative. Totally. But don't pretend like your faith trumps evidence. Like, it irks me. It irks me. It really does. Because it's an argument from a supposition that's already formed.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, do you think? So you think? Do you think this guy is gonna accept your challenge?
In all honesty, no, probably not. If he does, it's because we've publicly called him out now.
I was gonna say, Jason, is that him calling right
that
now?
was him.
Right?
I was like, holy shit!
Yeah. This isn't even live yet. Oh.
That's true. I didn't think
Yeah, right?
Wow.
Wow, that's divine.
The Holy Spirit came down and told him.
Yeah. Right.
You've likely heard that it is impossible to prove that God exists. You have heard wrong. Not only can the existence of God be proven, denying the proof undermines rational thought. It is true that God does not need anyone, let alone a website, to prove his existence. The Bible teaches that the existence of God is so obvious that we are without excuse for denying him. No one needs the proof that God exists. So this website has offered 8 steps to the logical proof of God's existence, in addition
this
to what
right
you
here.
already know.
It's like the Bible proves it. Yeah, well, the Bible would say that, wouldn't it?
I don't know.
What do you? All right, I want to. All right, let's see this. What do you believe? Laws of logic exist. Laws of logic do not exist. Okay, laws of logic exist.
Okay. Step 2, laws of mathematics. Do they exist or not?
Laws of mathematics exist. Sure. I mean, okay.
Right.
Leading question.
Laws of science exist
Laws of
or
science
not?
exist.
Well, there's no such thing as laws of science.
Yeah.
But
So you want to go back and say do not exist?
I mean,
we can
well,
say
it's a nonsensical term because there are no laws in science. There are laws in math.
using the law of gravity, we can predict how fast a heavier than air object will fall
That's
to the
math,
ground.
not science.
Well, that's what they're saying, science. So
Yeah.
anyway, absolute moral laws, do they exist or not?
Sure, we'll say they do because that's what they want you to.
Yeah.
You don't know what they want.
Yeah, I do.
The laws of nature, part A. The laws of logic, mathematics, science, and absolute morality are immaterial. Laws of logic, mathematics, science, and absolute morality are
Are they
material.
physical or non-physical things? Well, all right, they're immaterial. They are non-physical things. They're concepts. This is fun.
Yeah.
Arguably, you could say they're physical things because they're created by chemicals in the brain.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Laws of nature B. Laws of logic, mathematics, science, and absolute morality are universal or individual. What is your-
Universal?
You're saying universal. All right.
Oh yeah.
Law, natures of law, part C. Laws of logic, mathematics, science, and absolute morality are unchanging or changing. Which one? Are they changing?
All right, so unchanging is where they want us to
Yeah,
go.
unchanging is where they want
We
us to go.
don't know.
I would again,
don't
I would
know where
argue
they wanna
that
go.
science is changing, but
Okay, you've reached this page. And the Bible teaches us that there are two types of people in the world: those who profess the truth of God's existence and those who suppress the truth of God's existence. The options of seeking God or not believing in God are unavailable. The Bible never attempts to prove the existence of God, as it declares the existence of God is so obvious that we are without excuse for not believing in him. Romans 1, verse 18 to 21 says.
see that right there. See, it's that
That
faulty
is the worst
jumping.
circular logic ever.
Oh, it's not even circular logic. It's not even logic. It's just jumping from lily pad to lily pad and being like, oh,
So
look at
what-
this,
what-
look at
what
this,
happens
look at
if we
this.
hit step 8. We'll go to that.
Well, we got to see what Roman 1 says, though.
You want me to pull up Roman 1?
I have it here.
Oh, okay.
He said, the wrath of God is being revealed from heaven against all of the godlessness and wickedness of men who suppress their truth by the wickedness. Since what they may be known about God is plain to them, because God has made it plain to them. For since the creation of the world, God's invisible qualities, his eternal power and divine nature, have been clearly seen, being understood. It's pretty much the same thing that he just said, just from this. So prove 8 that God exists. The
Oh,
proof,
that's the worst logic ever.
so the proof that God exists is that without him, you couldn't prove anything.
Oh, yes. See, this reminds me of William Lane Craig's
Oh my
Kalam
gosh.
argument. This is garbage. It doesn't prove anything. It certainly doesn't prove God. And even if it did, it doesn't prove which God you're talking about. You can be
Wait.
talking about
Can I-
flying spaghetti monster.
Let me bring this back in full circle. The reason I bring this up is because from the website of the Bibles that you just got, the
The recovery version.
We've Recovered, that's
Yes,
on their
yes.
website.
Ah,
Somebody probably thinks that's really fucking clever, and I'm
no,
telling you
I
that's
know, I
stupid.
know. It's
Anyway, so yeah.
That's horrible.
yeah.
It was fun.
You know, I stuff like that. I prefer to think of it as what the way Richard Dawkins describes it, where he says the universe functions exactly as it should if there were no divine being and nobody cared about you. Like that's how the universe works. It's the immutable laws of the universe that they're trying to lead you into are exactly as they should be without any divine being at all.
Yeah. No,
No, because none of
The
this would
idea
exist
that-
without God, so you can't.
yeah. The God of the gaps, right? God exists in those spots that we don't understand yet. However, the operative word is yet. So as soon as
yeah,
we
right,
discover
yet.
how something works, God gets smaller and smaller. But they're going to continue to try to fit him in here and there. And now, I would argue that objective morality exists sometimes. It exists in certain places, but it has nothing to do with divinity. You know?
That was the worst.
It-
It
yeah.
was circular. I told you it had to double back on itself.
Yeah. All these things are true, therefore God. You know, it's a nonsensical little roundabout.
But that's just where faith comes in, though.
God.
Y'all get so
And
mad.
again, it showed exactly what I was talking about, the misunderstanding of terms when it comes to science and math, the laws of science. There's no such fucking thing. When he's talking about laws of gravity, he's talking about the law of gravitational force, which is a mathematical theory,
Yeah.
or a mathematical law, not the theory of gravity, which is an explanation overall of gravity.
Well, Galatians 2:19 says, "For I, through law, have died to law, that I might live to God."
Don't
This
quit
verse
tricking me.
mentions two goals. One is the law, and the other is God.
You're just trying to
But,
spin
like-
me up, is what you're doing.
You know, I mean, it's the Bible's prerogative to say that. If you believe any religious book. You'd have to believe that, in Enuma Elish, that Marduk killed Tiamat, and that's how the world came about. You'd have to believe that. You'd have to believe that in the Bhagavad Gita, everyone spoke like they were singing. It's a musical.
Yeah. With fantastic costumes and lively dance steps.
Exactly.
We have 2 minutes, and I'm done spinning y'all off subjects. So.
Okay. I guess we'll leave it there. Dan Porter, if you're watching, as I'm sure you probably are, just waiting to spit more fire.
He doesn't want.
We've thrown down the gauntlet. Come on the show. Talk to us. We'll have you. We'll even be nice to you.
I'll even wear pants.
Coming from Jason, that's a lot.
That's a lot. I know.
I just wanted to touch on one thing really quick because it's infuriating and I think it's hilarious. The Oklahoma governor has called for a day of prayer to end the heat wave.
Oh, yes. I forgot. Yeah, we do have to talk about
Let's pray for an answer to something.
Yeah.
Let's not actually do anything.
Fair. I was.
Not that we can do anything to end a heat wave that's happening currently, but I mean, I think this is evidence of hot areas getting hotter, dry areas getting drier. Exactly what scientists have been saying for fucking decades when it comes to global climate destabilization.
I agree with the Freedom from Religion Foundation stance that prayer is the ultimate political cop-out. Rather than do anything productive, let's pray about it, because that'll accomplish absolutely nothing.
But we need to take this conversation. I know we're out of time, but maybe we can talk about it next time. We need to think about not necessarily their cop-out that they're trying to, not do anything, but pray, and it's an easy cop-out. It gets some press or whatever. We need to talk about why they are really doing it. Why is the religious right coming together doing such huge things right now?
I want to talk about why the religious right is moving into the political left. I think that's an interesting thing.
I don't know.
It seems like the Democratic Party is moving more into the pandering than it has in the past. I think that would be an interesting thing to discuss.
Yeah.
But that's for another day. So if
Merry
you have any
Christmas.
questions, comments, outbursts, if you want to call us out and tell us we're being dishonest dickbags.
Dan Brown.
Can I call and call y'all out?
Did you say Dan Brown?
Dan Brown. I know. I meant
Dan Porter?
Dan Porter.
Dan Brown's not going to listen to the show anymore.
Dan Brown's not going to listen to the show.
I have Dan Brown on the mind.
I don't know, man.
You can call the Zombie Popcorn hotline, 757-337-2195. You can email us, nonreligious, at zombie-popcorn.com.
Make sure you put the phone number up in our complex editing.
Yeah.
I do that.
He
I
always
do
does.
that. What? Y'all are such ungrateful bastards.
It reminds me of the instance where you know how like Sylvia Brown, the psychic chick, she accepted the $1 million James Randi prize challenge. You know, she was gonna, and if you look on the James Randi side, they had a counter that was going for like 2 years of like days that Sylvia Brown hasn't responded, and
we should start.
but her thing was like, I didn't know how to get a hold of you. Like I said, that was her excuse of like why she didn't, because he cornered her on like the Larry King show or something like that, and she said, yeah, I'll take your challenge, I'll show you, and I'll take your $1 million. And he's like, I'm still waiting, Sylvia. And her response was, I didn't know how to get a hold of you. So put the number up. Make sure the number's up.
The number's always up
so
there.
people know how to get a hold of
It's
us.
at the beginning. No, it's not at the beginning. It's only at the end of the show. But
It's in the blog
yeah, it's
that
not.
I write every week.
Yeah,
at
it's
the
not- it's
end,
not hard to
all
find. I
the
mean,
contact.
You can
And-
always hit the contact button on the page. You can always look at any of the non-religious life blog posts, or you can just watch the show. I mean, or even if you're listening to it, say it again.
757-337-2195. Email us.
And I will have
nonreligious at zombie-popcorn.com. Like us on Facebook, or don't like us.
Or
Just
dislike
contact us at facebook.com/thisnonreligiouslife. So,
Okay, that's it.
until next week.
I love you.
I thought it was a good Christmas. Christian.
Jesus died on a cross. I go to church every Sunday. Just got out here. Then I read that Jesus died on a cross for a rotten hooker.
I thought I was a good Christian.
I go to church every Sunday.
I thought I was a good Christian.
I go to church every Sunday. I'm a very religious person.
I thought I was a good Christian. The very lies the serpent told to Eve in the Garden of Eden. Garden of Eden. Garden of Eden. The gospel of Jesus Christ. Spreads confusion and promotes lies. The gospel of Jesus Christ. Spreads confusion and promotes lies. The gospel of Jesus Christ. Spreads confusion and promotes lies. The gospel of Jesus Christ. Spreads confusion and promotes lies.